go. Are you guys able to see my presentation or notes? Presentation only? Perfect. Awesome. So what I'll be talking about today is from policy to platform, and I want to thank Dorothy for the wonderful introduction. And it is, let me just say, get it out of the way because I'll be saying it over and over. It's such a pleasure to be back at SICE. I really enjoyed the program. I so enjoyed all of my cohort and just studying and learning more about renewable energy. And mostly what I really enjoyed and what I use every day is policy, learning about policy, translation of policy, that intersection of policy and digital solutions, which is what I do. So it was a real pleasure to be back here and talking to all of you. I also want to let you know that I'm super chatty. Anybody from my cohort or Dorothy or even Shelton will tell you that I'm fairly chatty. So please don't hesitate to jump in with questions. I really prefer you just ask the questions while I'm on the slide rather than me having to go back. I'm really not good at going back. So please feel free to just jump in with questions. In fact, I'll probably ask you some along the way. Feel free to interject with your experiences. I would absolutely love that. I love to talk about this topic. Ask me anything. This is just a fun topic for me. So, we're going to talk about turning sustainable energy frameworks into digital systems that drive real change. Um, and I don't know how many of you anybody work in sustainable energy, sustainability reporting, environmental impact, environmental compliance, environmental consulting. Anybody? Anybody? I don't see any hands. Oh, great. This will be fun for you. You're going to learn a lot, and I'll just get to talk, and you will soak up the magic. On today's journey, we're going to talk about policy translation and how environmental regulations, in particular, shape digital requirements. We're going to talk about framework impact. So, once those policies become frameworks or standards, how that impacts what I do, which is creating that software architecture to meet those needs. We're going to talk about data excellence. Um, and a lot of data excellence is about transparency and traceability and sustainability and renewable energy reporting. And we're going to talk about some real world applications. So, a lot of fun things to talk about today. So, the digital translation challenge. So, first, we have this policy landscape. And policies are created to meet a particular need, either in sustainability or in renewable energy, data capture. All of these policies they create these complex compliance requirements. They require accurate tracking and reporting, verification processes, multiple jurisdictions, multiple standards, multiple types of workflow. All of these things are created through our policy landscape. So that informs the system requirements that our customers will come to us and ask us to meet. So they'll come to us and say, okay, there's a new policy, environmental impact policy or environmental compliance policy around PFAS or chemicals. How can you help us to meet this policy in a transparent and auditable way, and in an efficient way? Because a lot of this is about efficiency and not just compliance, but efficiency and transparency. How do we make sure that we have an auditable trail, that we've done everything that we can do to be compliant? And this is what I like to say. Talk about this to my clients all of the time. But environmental and renewable energy regulations have quietly, and I don't know if it's ever so quietly, but it feels quietly, have quietly become some of the strongest forces shaping modern software architecture and data strategy. The moment a new policy is signed, a series of non-negotiable digital requirements ripple through and they affect how data is captured, validated, stored, integrated, and reported. And this is my own quote. Feel free to take it and use it as a part of your mantra. But what I've discovered as of late is that these environmental regulations and sustainability reporting policies are nonstop. We're kind of in a situation where everything is new. There are words that we didn't use 5 years ago that we're using now. I did a talk a few days ago on ESG data intelligence. That wasn't even a thought 5 years ago. What is ESG data intelligence? What does that what's comprised in that? Those words and the work that we're doing, everything is brand new. A lot of these regulations and policies, the way that we are managing data to comply are brand new. Companies are developing and innovating every day new ways technologically in order to comply and to be able to manage data in a different way than we've ever managed before. And I'm going to talk about some of those ways as a part of this presentation. But it's been extremely satisfying and it's been I mean, it keeps you on your toes that every day there's something new. Every day there's a new requirement. A country has a new type of disclosure. They have new requirements for those disclosures. There's several countries with climate level disclosures. Does anybody keep up with that? Does anybody know of any countries with climate disclosures that you've just been like, wow, that's amazing. They want you to capture anybody? One that my favorite probably is Australian climate disclosures. Google it when you get a chance. Australian climate disclosures are interesting because not only do they have penalties for your sustainability reporting. So let's say you fill out your sustainability report, you say that your scope 1, 2, 3 emissions are as such, and you're audited, and they find out that maybe you weren't correct. Maybe you overstated your renewable energy. Um, usage. Maybe you overstated or understated your water usage. Maybe you understated some things and created a more favorable picture of yourself than is actually true. Not only can they find you as an organization, the CEO or CFO of the organization can also be fined. How fun is that? Can I tell you, no one is more involved in a software rollout and making sure reporting is correct than someone who will also be fined if if things are not correct. They can't say, "Oh, our sustainability officer just didn't get this right," or "Oh, my underlings just didn't write this up correctly." They cannot do that because they are also fined. They are also responsible directly. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So there are several major reporting frameworks. I was just talking about the Australian disclosures, and several countries have climate disclosures of that type. There's, Singapore, Philippines, Canada, you have their own climate disclosures. Instead of us having climate disclosures, instead of us having climate disclosures, the US, we have California has climate disclosures, which I find interesting. So California's climate disclosures represent sort of, if you think globally, most people in the world recognize the state of California. So when they think of the US and climate disclosures or climate regulations, they're going to think of California. But several states actually have emerging climate disclosures, like Illinois, I think Massachusetts. Um, I want to say Colorado has some sort of climate disclosures that they're also looking, developing or emerging. But it's very, very interesting that globally, people will think of California. But there's several major reporting frameworks. There's CSRD. This is an EU centric reporting framework. And then we have, oops, I'm sorry. Let's see what happened here. Did I close out the presentation? No. Okay. I wanted to make sure. So CSRD is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and it requires double materiality. It's EU centric, it includes EU countries, and it's to detail ESG disclosures across European operations. I'm going to go into detail about this one a little bit later. There's TCFD. That's the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And this task force was actually disbanded just a few years ago because it was a task force created for climate-related financial disclosures. Once the task force came up with the standards, which are now IFRS 1 and 2, they disbanded. So a lot of people still refer to those standards, IFRS 1 and 2, as TCFD, but it's actually IFRS 1 and 2 now. There's ISSB, which is SASB, and that's a really great site. If you are starting an internship or you're getting a job in sustainability and you're looking for some good information to some foundational information to help you on your journey, SASB has a great website. It's very teaching, very learning type of website. It talks about materiality, material topics. It actually goes into materiality by industries will help. So that helps you to know what are the sustainability topics that are material or important for that particular industry. So if you're working in you know, a specific industry and you're trying to figure out, well, what should I talk about in this interview or what should I let them know that I understand? That's a really great website to go kind of research the industry that you're working in and get all the material topics given to you. And they go into really good detail. SBTi, which is Science-Based Target Initiative. Science-Based Target Initiative is a really interesting data management challenge. Science-Based Target Initiative requires that you have a bucket of data and you set a baseline, and then you're going to create targets from your baseline of data. So 1 year of data is acceptable, 2 years is preferable, but often companies will come to us that have been collecting data for 5 to 10 years, which is best practice. So you'll be using 10 years of historical data on your energy usage, water usage, various components of your sustainability program, and you're creating targets based on that historical data. So imagine the data architecture that's required in order to manage 10 years of just one data set of information. So just 10 years of your electricity usage for scope two. Imagine the lift, the amount of data. Because it's not just about we're just going to do a data import. It never works that way. I always hope it works that way, but I can tell you it never works that way. Why? Because we're human and we're not infallible. And you know what humans do? They make mistakes. So you'll have 10 years of data and there'll be an inexplicable gap in data. It could be 1 month, it could be 5 months, it could be a year. And nobody knows why there's no data there. So now we have to hunt it up. But most importantly, you have to build data architecture that's going to flag that before you bring it into the system. So without that functionality and understanding that you need that functionality, dealing with frameworks like SBTi can be extremely difficult. I did a lot of talking. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. These are some major regulations in addition to the frameworks that I just talked about. And CSRD is actually a regulation also. But the UK, obviously, for obvious reasons, are really outpacing us as far as sustainability reporting regulations. They are outpacing us in accomplishing um, more of a carbon or a net zero environment overall. They're just outpacing us. We're getting a little bit more behind every year, just a little bit more behind. Yes, Shelton.
I apologize as a moderator of the question and answer. I should have been able to raise my hand a little quicker. Uh, but I
That's
do
it.
have a question regarding the different, like the ISSB and the
Oh, okay.
SASB, SBTIs. So,
Mhm.
how is this? Someone who doesn't know this at all, how is this divided by industry? Is it more divided by the framework is relates to industry or sectors, or is it by jurisdiction or government, or what? How does that,
Oh, it's a
who
good
does what?
question.
Yeah,
It's so confusing. I know. There's so many letters also. So
yeah, yeah.
fun. So for CSRD, it covers every industry and every business. What delineates your CSRD compliance level is the size of your business. That's the only thing. So the amount of revenue that you bring in, even if you're an American company, if you have a significant presence in the UK, you must comply with CSRD requirements. So that's for CSRD. For TCFD, ISSB, SBTi, those are voluntary frameworks that any company in any industry can choose to base their sustainability reporting on. any industry. So knowing these prime four will establish you, will give you the foundation that you need to really be able to work with any company in any industry, any organization in any industry, anywhere in the world, actually. I work globally, so I'm responsible for EMEA, which is the UK, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Australia, and America, North America, and South America. Every single company uses some type of framework similar to TCFD, ISSB, SBTi, a GRI, which I didn't include, which is Global Reporting Initiative. Global Reporting Initiative is a little bit more complex, which is why I didn't include it. Um, it is more centered around companies that have a significant environmental impact. So think of a chemical manufacturer, a lot of plastics manufacturers. If you have a high paints, that's one. If you have a high environmental impact, high chemical usage, GRI is also a framework that companies will choose to use. But it's any company can choose to use GRI or TCFD, ISSB, or SBTi. So it really sets you up. If you know these, and CSRD, I really recommend. If you know these four, this gives you a body of knowledge to work anywhere and with anyone. See, there was a rhyme and reason to my madness. These are specific to countries. These are very specific to countries and or regions. So the UK has ESOS, which is really about energy efficiency and saying that businesses are going to conduct energy audits, they're going to identify energy saving opportunities, and most importantly, they're going to put them into action. And then if they don't, they have to answer, they're required to answer as to why. So EKESOS or ESIS is very centric to the UK. Not a lot of companies outside of it will ever deploy this. The EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, uh, this is brand new, but has been getting a lot of attention, even on our side. There's a lot of legislators that are terrified of this type of legislation in the US because it puts a carbon tariff on carbon intensive products like steel and cement. Those are the most honest people in our country. Steel manufacturers cement and some electricity. So it's a legislation that I can't foresee in the future coming to the States, but it is right now in force in the UK and has informed a lot of our product decisions going forward because CBAM is very, very invasive as to your production. How are you producing a product? Where does it come from? What's their carbon footprint? How carbon intensive it is? What are you doing to reduce the carbon intensity? And more importantly, what it says is, I'm going to charge you. So not only am I going to ask you all of these questions about your product, what you're doing, I'm going to charge you to give you an incentive to do better. And that is CBAM. So you can imagine that the data management for CBAM must be accurate, it has to be clear, and it has to be consistent, and it has to be it is complex because companies want to make sure that they are reporting correctly because incorrect reporting costs dollars. Um, I would love to see it come here, but I don't see this particular policy coming across the pond anytime soon. But we do have California climate disclosures, which was actually paused recently. The reporting requirement has been paused. Again, politics. We're just not consistent in the way that we apply sustainability or renewable energy policies in this country. You can just travel from one state. There's an RPS. You travel to another state, and they're like, what's renewable energy? You travel to another state, and they have wind energy, and they have solar, and they have solar programs for homeowners. And then you go to another state, and they're like, what's solar? And that is America. But we have California climate disclosures, and we had to build architecture around these disclosures to make sure that we were prepared, or we were preparing our customers for the reporting compliance for it. And then there's renewable portfolio standards, which is supposed to be state level regulations that require electric utilities to source minimum percentage of their power from eligible renewable energy sources. And again, some states have this, some states do not. The states that do are obviously very interested in renewable energy, and they're going to invest in renewable energy. In the states that do not have this, Florida, and I did a whole paper about Florida not having an RPS, but you know that this is not something that you're not going to have a lot of renewable energy sources to choose from. Any questions? Notice how I try to stay neutral. I don't try to inject my opinions anywhere. Yeah. So frameworks influence our software design. So each reporting standard, it creates these technical standards that we now have to create in order to comply. So it affects our data architecture, our calculation engines, how we deploy the calculation engine, because there was a time, and you probably know this if you use Excel, you could, you had this little calculation engine and it said, gave you these instructions on how to deploy the calculation engine. But after that, you really couldn't look at the formula. I mean, you just hoped it worked. I mean, to some degree in Excel, it's still kind of like that. You create, a little, what you hope is a good formula, and you pop it in and it said, put data source here, and add this number, and hopefully we can't do that because those calculations have to be auditable, which means the customer should be able to pull up that calculation engine and at any time change it, anytime update it. Maybe new emissions factors are available. Customers should be able to insert those new emissions factors, and there should be a time date when that occurred. So even just calculation engines have to change. Reporting modules. So sometimes we have to create a template to exactly mimic the legislation that has become policy. So customers they can easily access the software, access that template, and they're not sort of guessing about the pieces of their report. All of it's there for them. A lot of customers ask for that. They don't want to have to, start things from scratch, and I get it. But we have to generate very framework specific formatting for materiality, matrices, and disclosure requirements, and calculations, and visualizations for dashboards. And then again, that audit trail, and that's the most important part. That immutable transaction log that says this happened at this time for this particular organization, and it's time stamped. Version control and evidence of management for third-party verification. And also, if someone's gone in and made any changes, that should also be logged. That's a part of your auditable trail. And two things I wanted to bring to your attention here is the granular attribution and the temporal tracking. Those two things are so important in data architecture. And I just want to draw your attention because if you are looking at this field, data management, data science, machine learning, language, any type of solutions or solutions architecture, these are two very important components of that. And that granular attribution is going to tie who used what to when and to where it happened. It's basically that accurate matching of consumption to the actual environmental impact. And that's so important in renewable energy and sustainability reporting. And then that temporal tracking. So, renewable energy in particular, let's say that you want to be able to say you're using 50% renewable energy. That's what you want to be able to say. How can you prove that? How do you prove that? What's a good way to prove that if you don't have temporal tracking? So temporal tracking will say, was the renewable electricity generated at the same time it was consumed? Because you could have a um, solar energy production, and you have 10 megawatts that was produced at 10 a.m. And then your plant used 10 megawatts of renewable energy. But if it wasn't consumed when it was generated, there's a mismatch there. And so you may think it's one to one, but for a company that's saying we've used 50% renewable energy, you used it a part of the day, you didn't use it the whole part of the day, and you didn't use it when it was generated, so you actually lost some of that energy. So it's very important to have that temporal tracking as a part of our data architecture also, so that when claims are made, those claims are accurate. Especially now with these data centers, and I don't know if anybody's keeping track of all the data centers that are going online. And also, as the data centers come online, notice that there's a lot of power companies and electricity generation organizations that are saying local entities, local homeowners, their light bills are rising. But they're using the same, if you're in your home using the same amount of energy, why would your light bill why would your light bill rise? But a lot of that is happening because someone is footing the bill for the data center. And very rarely is it actually the corporation that foots the entire bill. The local community for that data center is going to foot a lot of that bill. So policies define the data universe that has to be captured. So this is from my own company, Evotix. This is our CSRD graphic. And what I really want to draw your attention to here is the 1,144 data points for CSRD alone. So this is just one policy. This is one legislation, one set of architecture rules that I have to manage, and it's 1,144 data points. So to translate this digitally, when this legislation was first being announced, it was just emerging. We had to think about new data fields. We had to think about additional audit histories. We had to think about timestamps, different calculation engines. We had to think about role-based permissions, updated data schemes, and integrations. We had to create and make sure that clear change management protocols were in place because that is 1,144 data points to manage for one reporting policy framework. And CSRD, let me go to this next one. CSRD has 12 ESRAs. And those ESRAs are split up such that there's two cross-cutting ESRAs, so that it's just general, it covers everything. Then there's environment, there's five, socials, four, and then governance, there's one. So within that, the strategy for that is that you have to report on your risk, opportunities, and impacts. And then you have your implementation of your targets, your action plans, and your resource allocation. And then you have your performance measurement. Everyone wants to know their targets. How are we doing? We want to keep track of our trends. So I'm going to tell you a little story about CSRD and my own software, and come with me on a journey, if you will. So CSRD, just as I'm showing you, we saw that it was emerging policy, and we saw that it was going to have these requirements in particular. We can't wait until everything is solidified. We kind of have to start building architecture as we understand the policy is emerging. Because customers are, they're pinging us. Hey, have you heard about CSRD? We don't know when we're going to have to comply, but we need to know, what are you doing? How are you responding to that? So as soon as I understood what this legislation would be, and this is a graphic that I actually created for Evotix, to help our customers understand the policy. So I have to translate the policy, not just for us, but for our customers often, to help them understand what the ESRAs were and what the strategy was going to be for them and for us. So the first part of the strategy, and this is our software that you're looking at, we had to create a materiality module. And I hope you can see this. It's a little light, but I hope you can see it. So the first part was creating the risks, and then we have impacts. And then we have to create scoring as a part of this materiality matrix. Next, we have to create visualizations for them. So first, we're looking, okay, we have to create a materiality assessment. That's the first new module to create, just to meet with the ESRAs and the expectation of the strategy of the ESRAs, which is grabbing data and managing data from risks, opportunities, and impacts. So we have to make sure that we're going to create a module that's going to be able to hold and capture risk, opportunities, and impacts. Are you able to see this? Let me see if I can. There you go. Maybe I can, but there you go. You can see this is for climate. So that's the ESRA. So I want to create the ESRA title first. Then we want to be able to create a place or a solution for the impacts. So what are the impacts? We want to be able to capture the impact type because this is going to help with our reporting and any type of visualizations that the customer might require. Then we want to make sure that we're capturing not just qualitative data, but quantitative data also. So that you'll see here in our risks and opportunities. So we want to see the type, opportunity or risk, likelihoods. We're capturing all of the different data points as a part of CSRD, and that's the goal. I'm going to go back in. The next thing that we did, we went to a customer and we said, okay, we think we have something. We think we have something. And they're like, that's great, but where are our metrics going? What are the individual KPIs? I'm like, okay. So now we have a place for their metrics. And so metrics, if you're in sustainability at all, um, you'll have material topics. When you have a material topic, let's say your material topic is energy consumed, right? In order for your material topic for you to understand your material topic, whether it is, too high or too low, you have to actually collect all of your energy data, and that's what your metric is. So your metrics are going to be energy consumed. It's going to be, and let me see if I can blow this up also. Did I blow it up? Oh, there we go. There we go. It'll be energy consumed. It could also be qualitative data like your ethics, your governance, your water conservation efforts. All of those things are part of your metrics. And once we were able to, okay, we have your metrics, so maybe energy. Energy is going to be one of those metrics. And maybe the overarching idea is to capture your total energy consumed because we want to set targets on top of that. So you have total energy consumed. How do you know what's a reasonable target? We want to reduce our energy consumption by 50%. Is that reasonable based on the amount of energy that you're consuming? But once we capture that energy, now we want to link it to the frameworks within CSRD so that we can capture that metric and easily link it to its data point. The next step of this journey now is we looked at our framework, is creating the entire CSRD framework in our solution. Unfortunately, CSRD is absolutely free because it's a compliance level regulation. We can go to the ESRS website, and any of you can also do that. You can go to the ESRA's website and eFrag, and you'll see all of the ESRAs there. They'll give you a nice little mapping for it. And so that's exactly what we did. So we created the entire framework in our system so our clients can easily link all of the data points to their metrics so they're all collecting. They're all collecting. And it's just an easy way for them to accomplish their reporting. But the next thing we also realized was that we needed some way to embed Scope 3 architecture. Why does anybody have a thought as to why we would want to embed Scope 3 functionality at all? And Scope 3 functionality, what you're seeing here is being able to capture emissions information and sustainability information, energy, renewable energy from suppliers or your customers. Why would we want to do that? Anybody? Why would we want to just ask them and have them give that to us? Well, your customer could say, hey, we are very sustainable. Maybe responded to an RFP or an RFI, and they said, hey, we're very sustainable. We use 50% renewable energy. We have very low water conservation. Our carbon footprint is extremely low. Um, we're a wonderful company. You want to check on that. You absolutely want to make sure that you're auditing the information that your suppliers, and your suppliers are a part of your scope 3 emissions. Those scope 3 emissions are normally larger than your scope 1 and 2 by several magnitudes. If you have even one supplier that's misstating their sustainability data or their sustainability information, that's a huge reputational risk. Um, and a lot of companies have been brought down from that kind of reputational risk incident. Can anybody think of one? I have one off the top of my head, but if anyone knows one, I would love an additional. The one I'm thinking of is Volkswagen. It's my favorite one to talk about ever. I absolutely love talking about because Volkswagen was that brand. It was a sustainable car brand. I mean, they almost, you know, I mean, if you think about it, this is our carbon product, a very high intensity carbon product in itself, but they really set themselves up as a very sustainable brand. Like if you drink oat milk and you brought your own bags to get groceries, you were driving a Volkswagen because that was their core customer. And then they had two hits to their brand. The first one was at emissions tampering. Do you remember that? They said that their diesel vehicle was actually 40% more emissions efficient than it actually was. And there was a whole fallout from that. And it really stemmed from, they said, was because it was a win by any means culture and they were stepping in. That wasn't going to happen again. We're better than that. Their stock took a hit. It took a huge hit. But they steadily came back. And then as soon as they did come back, and it took about a couple of years, I want to say about 4 years later, they had a human rights issue with their parts. So it was an Ungar slave labor rights issue with their car parts. And it was discovered that this supplier was making this particular part in an area, a region of China that was known for slave labor. Their vehicles weren't even allowed in several countries because of it. It was a huge story. Their stock tumbled and they have yet to recover. I don't know if anybody has been keeping up with it at all. I love to keep up with it, but their stock has not recovered at all. In fact, for the first time in 100 years, I think they said, since 1920 something, they had to close a factory and let people go. I want to say, was it in Belgium or Germany? They closed a factory. First time ever. Their stock took a huge tumble. So yes, you want to make sure that those scope 3 emissions are that you're auditing the information that your suppliers give you because not only is it a part of your scope 3 emissions, but it's also a part of your reputational risk and risk overall. Yes, Shelton.
All right. So, got a couple of questions. Or got a
Mhm.
question or two. John was had a question. John, you can
Oh,
feel free to verbalize it if you like to as well. So that Katrina can answer it as we go through the
Oh,
presentation.
it was just a comment of like
Okay.
thinking of another one where it's not environmental, but I actually worked on the response for the Target breach when they lost all the credit cards, like 65 million. And that was through a small HVAC company that Target used, that they had a flaw in their security mechanism. And the attackers were able to get the credentials from that HVAC company and then get into the company and move laterally and steal, I think it was like 65 million credit cards at that point. So it was a huge breach. So
oh gosh. And
yeah,
what does that do? You don't trust Target with your
yeah,
data anymore. You
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
That's exactly what it does. That's a good one. Thank you. That's a good one. The other one I remembered is the oat milk one. Do you remember Oatly? Where there was a whole issue about where they're getting the almonds for the almond milk. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole, if you get a chance, I highly recommend that you read some of these sustainability reports as they come out. I think Patagonia just put theirs out, and there's been a whole online outcry about Patagonia's sustainability report. They've kind of backed off some of their net zero targets quite a bit. And again, this is a brand like Volkswagen that is known for its, being green. Okay. So that's a super interesting one. So get a chance if you get a chance, I highly encourage you. I mean, they're all not like Apple. You won't get Octavia Spencer or Jeff Goldblum on them, but they're really, really good. The next part of this journey for CSRD is the reporting component and what a lot of our customers told us is that sometimes they linked metrics to data points, but they didn't know if they were actually reporting. Is somebody entering in information? And that's where we had to create this reporting framework exception report. Just to, oh, I thought it was, there we go. Um, just to, so that they would know which data points weren't reporting. So it was a lot of steps in having a legislation, having a policy like CSRD, and then creating architecture to respond to that legislation. All of those steps. I'm going to go pretty quickly over these because I was told I have a 5-minute warning and I'm super chatty. Data transparency is so important, and I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm happy to share my slides after this. But data transparency and traceability are the hallmark of sustainability reporting and renewable energy policy architecture. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the traceability in renewable energy systems, and you guys are in class, you've probably seen this before, but there's the generation source. So just being able to track those renewable energy certificates. Then you have that transmission and distribution, right? Monitoring the energy flow and the grid infrastructure. Then you've got that consumption and attribution. So you're matching the purchased renewable energy to the actual facility of consumption. And then you've got that verification and retirement. And so within all of these steps, there's a lot of opportunity for companies to misstate or to inflate their use of one particular type of energy over another. There's a paper, and this is where I get this paper from a group of researchers who are actually in China who are talking about this topic of green electricity data province and traceability. And I am into this topic so much because our customers are. They are interested very much in province. How can we be sure that the amount of green electricity that we're using is actually green? How can we be sure that we're being told the correct information and thereby reporting the information? So this is sort of the data loop for renewable energy, and an entity. I just wanted to define all of the terms here. So you start out with an entity, which is going to refer to the physical, digital, other types of concepts of where the energy starts. And then you have the activity, so the use of that entity. And then you're going to have the agent, so the organizations that are performing the activities. And it sort of creates this loop where data needs to be traced. And oh, great, I provided the source. Sometimes I don't do that. But this is based on a paper of this same name. So please, I implore you to go look at it. I've reread it several times. And this is all theoretical because, again, everything is new. Everything is new. Nothing has been done before. But what they propose is a data province model that's based on blockchain. And if you've heard of blockchain before, how have we heard of blockchain? Crypto, right? And everybody's thinking so much about using blockchain for crypto that we're not really thinking also about the ways that it can be used in order to certify immutable data. Blockchain is not just for coins. Blockchain is also for ensuring that the information that you receive on a product or on an energy loop is actually true and it comes from the source that was stated at the time that it was stated in the way that it was stated. So today, renewable energy tracking depends largely on, a guarantee of origin, an annual reconciliation. You get an invoice, you get a note, you get a PDF that says, hey, this is the amount of your renewable energy. It's based on it's batch based. There's not a lot of real-time tracking available. So you can see the gaps and the opportunities for things to be misstated, to be not correct. There's a lot of manual data entries, which in itself creates an opportunities for things to be misstated and not to be correct. So blockchain is really emerging in this space as a way to ensure that for CBAM, for legislation like CBAM and even CSRD, that the data that's being provided is true and comes from the source that was stated at the time that it was stated, which is super interesting. I love that about blockchain. But risk management through data, and this just comes from Deloitte. This is no fancy. You can also feel free to look this up, but a 73% accuracy and improvement and 2.4 times faster reporting. But the average risk reduction is 340,000. But if you look at a company like Volkswagen, I think that number is much higher. Look at what they could have avoided in risk if they had risk management through data and really paid attention to it because they would have caught that supplier and said, hey, this is really cheap parts. How are they doing this? As opposed to only looking at the profitable side and auditing that supplier. Can you think of some very real risks that organizations are seeking to avoid also? Any others other than the very real reputational risk? Anyone? I will tell you supply chain risks. Um, Breaks in your supply chain are devastating because most manufacturing facilities run 24 hours. They have three shifts and they are nonstop. Most manufacturing facilities only have a break around Christmas and they'll have a shutdown. Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's a full week if they're nice, but most run 24 hours. So a break in your supply chain and you're having to shut down simply because you don't have a part or a particular component is devastating to profitability and to making sure that you're keeping up and running and you're producing the parts and information and product that your customers expect. The consequences of noncompliance, the monetary fines are also a risk. Having to pay tens of thousands of dollars in monetary fines, that's a real risk that customers seek to avoid. Yes, Chosen.
Yeah, when you're talking about risks, thinking about in particular with blockchain and uh, you've got the risks of human safety. You've got issues regarding sourceability of where particular things come from, and
Hmm.
you're thinking about products and produce. Things about where
Hmm.
did lettuce come from? Where did this particular organic grown
Is it organic?
yeah, is
Where
it
did
really
it come
organic?
from?
Yeah, yeah. Where did this come from? Where did that come from? If there happens to be some, some bad listeria or something that comes, from
Hmm.
or salmonella that comes from some sort of product or produce or meat or whatever. Yeah, so incorrect reporting can really harm individuals' lives, and it can be a major risk to life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so many companies do try it. They do. They absolutely do try it. Um, you'd be surprised. And I think I saw someone's comment pop up about trade barriers. Absolutely. And you'd be surprised to know this. I did a paper on this when I was at Johns Hopkins. Brazil is very forward with sustainability, and they will not tolerate, you know, not understanding or being sure that when you say something is sustainable, renewable, the carbon intensity, your carbon footprint, they are very, very um, quick to make sure and audit and ensure that what you say is true. That country is doing so much as far as moving towards net zero goals. It's kind of incredible. And I encourage you also, if I say it again, to Google them and take a look at them. I did a paper on Brazil and I was really impressed. And then being accused of greenwashing. I know every year we get a little list of all the of all of the companies that people are being, they've been accused of greenwashing. And so there's a list, there's a place that you can go and they'll give you a list of all the companies that have been accused of greenwashing. I want to say that Apple's always on it. I feel like Apple's always on it for various reasons. Coca-Cola's always on it. Kraft, which makes most of our food here in the United States, is almost always on it. Um, Walmart, Nestle, a lot of our manufacturers are typically on the greenwashing list, which I find pretty hilarious and also sad at the same time.
Katrina, I might look silly for asking this because I'm not quite in the ESG sustainability realm, but what is greenwashing?
Greenwashing is when you say that your carbon footprint or your environmental impact is less than it actually is proven to be.
Okay.
So you've said, oh, our carbon footprint is very low. We have a very reduced environmental impact. But when people look at your sustainability report, what they see is that you use a lot of carbon offsets in order to create the impression that have a lower carbon footprint than you actually do, because you can do that. You can purchase a forest in Brazil to offset all the carbon that you're using, which a lot of critics of that practice say, okay, that doesn't incentivize your actually reducing your carbon footprint. You're just hiding your carbon footprint by offsetting it in other places. So you're essentially a philanthropist. You're donating money to Brazil's forests to preserve them. It's great, but you haven't actually changed your practices in any way. But there are definitely ways where you can create the impression that are you are greener than you are. There are ways that it can happen. Bill Gates has said the challenge lies not just in the volume of data we can collect, but in our ability to effectively manage, analyze, and extract meaningful insights from it. And I thought that was something really insightful that he said, because I think for the next generation, we're going to be doing nothing but managing data. Sustainability reporting, renewable energy, ensuring that you're using renewable energy. And in fact, the production and use of renewable energy requires a tremendous amount of data. This new age with AI, again, this is a data management exercise. We are going to inadvertently have to manage large amounts, large buckets of data, and how we're able to do that and whether we're able to do it in an innovative way is going to determine our future. Are we going to be able to extract meaningful insights? Because I don't know if there was a book that I had to read.
I think she froze, didn't she? Okay.
Oh no, I think she did.
Okay. I was like, is it me? But oh no, Katrina, you froze. Oops. Well, while she's frozen, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. So when she comes back, she can hit them. Yeah. Oh no, Katrina.
John, I think your question is a good one about non-compliance leading to trade barriers with compliant countries. I don't know the answer to that one, but it's interesting that hopefully we get Katrina back real quick. She can answer that and see if she has some examples.
She did address it a little bit during her talk for a minute there, but yeah. So
We got her back.
oh.
She's back. Katrina, we lost you. We lost you. I read a
I'm
book.
so sorry, I lost you. I am so sorry. Am I still sharing? Is it still
Yeah.
sharing? Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
just wanted to add as a last point, that there's this, if any of you have ever read it, it's very, very interesting. But it's a book called How to Lie with Statistics. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. I highly recommend How to Lie with Statistics. It's a great book, but that is the generation. That's where we're at now. Anybody can lie with any statistics at any time. And it's an important topic that we're going to be grappling with in the next decade or two. How do we effectively and truthfully manage data and actually extract the insights that matter and are truthful? And I think that was the end. Let's see. There we go. I did have a case study for manufacturing platform integration, and the challenge was fragmented data and bringing all of that data together. And I know I'm over time, Dorothy. I'm so sorry. And we were able to solutionize that. But again, I'll provide my slides and I'll let you read over that. But this is the end, I promise. But Successfully building systems that matter means that we have to start with translating policies and looking at how those policies are created and how customers, organizations, and entities will take that policy and translate it into software architecture and digital systems because digital systems are how organizations are going to comply with policies. That's where we are. That is the way forward. I don't know of a single policy that's not going to be or has not already been translated into some sort of digital system. So as you're thinking about careers and you're going forward, I highly suggest that you start thinking about, the data management component of your career. Like, will you be that solutions architecture person? Are you good at Excel? Can you create great visualizations? And just kind of be mindful that our careers now are not just writing reports, but they're very much about visualizing and telling stories with data. That is the end, I promise. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. We've got, do we have any other questions? I just want to open that up really quick. I know Dorothy's, okay. If there's any other questions, I want to be able to ask any questions here, opportunities, and um, feel free to raise your hand or go ahead and just shout them out.
I know that John had a question in there in the chat as well, Katrina, right before you froze and left. But
Okay.
we can go to that question and then Wataru Shelton, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, John was just, and he mentioned that, of course, you've spoke to us just a little bit about non-compliance leading to trade barriers with the compliant countries, and
Mhm.
what ramifications are there for telling the white lie?
A lot of countries will want that record. Where did this product come from? What is its origin? No one wants to receive products. Again, remember with Volkswagen, I was talking about how the products were stopped at the border when they read the origin documents and discovered that they were made or potentially made in this area of China. Those cars were stopped at, they were at transport. They're on carriers and were not allowed into the country. That's a consequence. If they discover that you are a business who routinely you have questionable ethics or questionable governance, and that's what ESG reporting is all about. It is that environmental, social, and governance components that businesses are asked to report on. And a part of that governance component is your ethics. Are you auditing your suppliers? Are you sure that you are not engaging in human rights violations or suppliers that would do the same? Are your suppliers being accurate in their carbon footprint um, reporting? Are you being accurate and clear? Because as a part of ESG reporting, you should be sending out surveys internally and externally, asking the people that work for you and the people that do business with you, hey, what do you think is material for our business? So that encourages that transparency. So countries like EU, countries, now us doing business in the EU and with the CBAM legislation, they're going to be hesitant if they're not certain that we're being accurate in our carbon footprint reporting because they have to pay money now. They have tariffs. They have carbon tariffs. They have to pay money for carbon intensive activities. And if you are sending them additional carbon intensive products, they're not going to want to do business with you.
Yeah, wonderful analysis there. Wataru, would you like to ask a question, please?
Yes. Thank you for your um enjoyable seminar.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
I I have actually three questions if time allows. And my first question is that I think for like regulations, there are two patterns of regulations actually. The first is that like you have to calculate and evaluate the environment burden on like as a whole company. Like I
Mhm.
think TCFD is that kind of regulation, and but for like CBAM or like battery passport that Europe is trying to impose, I
Mhm.
think you have to calculate the environmental burden by products, I think.
Byproduct. Yes,
And
this is true. Mhm.
and and my question was that like, is there any difference of how should I say like a burden or like a calculations uh, if like the one company has to do both like TCFD, CBAM, and like battery passport. Like, is there like a difference? Like, do they have to use like many platforms or applications to do such kind of like different types of calculations? That's my first
So,
question.
oh, that's a good question. Let me answer that first because it's so good. So, just 5 years ago, there was probably, I don't know, two separate camps of there was software that did your carbon footprint for your entire organization, and then there were point solutions that really focused on product level carbon footprint calculations or PCAs or LCAs, that life cycle analysis for the product level only. But what we've seen in I guess within the last year or two, I see companies that offer the full suite of solutions. Why? Because you don't want to lose your customer. Maybe they're using a point solution for their life cycle analysis for their product, and now that solution is now offering carbon footprinting. They can grab your customer from you because I don't want to go to two people. I really want to go to one person who will do everything. So what we've seen in the last couple of years is that there are solutions that handle the full suite of your entire organizational reporting and your product level reporting. So a couple that do that right now, Forward Earth is one. Another one, if you look at Sea Green, which is Siemens, they have a product level, it's called Sea Green, but it's product level. But now Siemens offers the same thing, organizational carbon footprinting software along with that product level software to meet that CBAM and CS3D, which I didn't talk about, but CS3D compliant policies that are supplier level policies because nobody wants to go to several places to get what they can get from the person they're already dealing with. Like, why can't you help me? I don't want to go to three people. Go ahead for your next question. I hope that helps.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Mhm.
That was a very helpful answer. And actually, my second question is kind of related to the first question.
Okay.
You have mentioned about the architecture of like the data collection,
Hmm.
and I was always wondering why Germany had to make the Catryna X system when there is like as you said like Siemens like applications like or like individual applications that could be applied. Like in like to me like Germany and Catryna X are doing very making things very complicated even when it's not even necessary.
And my first thought was because of the financial data component. Like they wanted to be able to include a certain element of financial data. And now, so when you look at CSRD, they require double materiality, which means there's a financial impact as well as an environmental impact components to CSRD. And I think Germany started on that road earlier than CSRD legislation emerged.
Mm,
And they were already thinking of these two things. But the way that they implement it, to your point, is very frustrating because there is software where it would have been, in my opinion, more advantageous to simply include a financial component or include that digital tagging of financial data with existing software or existing software
mm,
architectures. But that's not what they did. And my other thought is control. They didn't
mm,
want German data or information outside of Germany.
mm,
And
mm,
that's all I
mm.
can think of.
Yes, thank you. Oh, because this is my personal experience, but I came from Japan, and Japan had to deal with the battery passport that Germany has tried to do, and we had like a lot of discussions, and like whether like we should make some like the same type of like the data space, or maybe like each country can like apply the individual application system that they are just like they have applied already. And so, or like to me, what Germany has done doesn't kind of like, well, I won't say it doesn't make sense, but like it was kind of weird.
It is very well,
And
and they also had CS3D before other countries. So before there was CSRD, before there was what the Green New Deal in EU, before a lot of the rise of sustainability reporting was CSR3D, which is that supplier level sustainability reporting. So I think they started on this road before, and in that way they were kind of innovating, but there
mm-hmm,
really wasn't a thought as to legacy software because the companies in Germany were using things like Seagreen. Seagreen's huge. They're using IBM,
mm-hmm.
the NV technology. So yeah, I have no answer because it's frustrating for us because we typically have to deal with it because company that is a legacy software that we now have to integrate with. And typically, what we
Thank you.
have is like Power BI pulling out the insights to create integrated
Uh,
reporting. So,
uh, Thank you.
you,
Sorry, I think it's not running out of time, but my last question was that I think like looking at the whole supply chains, especially for manufacturing sector, there are many small, medium, and medium enterprises that have a very difficulty with dealing with these like compliances and ESGs and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And how should I think of that? I mean, well, it's easy to say that well they should comply to the rules, but it's very sometimes it's very difficult for them to clean and like collect the data, right? So like I was wondering how you are dealing with small and medium enterprises.
So we have two types of software. The first thing that we do is offer two levels of software to our customers. We have an enterprise level that costs more, but it's more complex, supports more complex reporting, supports large businesses, multinational, and global at the same time. So it's going to be more expensive. Then we have a smaller software that's easier to deploy. It's something that we can help you implement, but we can also just show you how to implement it and you'll save money in implementation. You can admin your own system. So we are also thinking of ways to offer a cheaper software to aid companies that, aren't the size of a Nestle or aren't the size of, an Estee Lauder to help them comply also, who won't be able to afford those consultants also, those environmental consultants to help them. So that's the first thing. I think a lot more software companies are going to do this. They're going to lean towards having simpler software, cheaper software for these smaller companies. The second thing is when these policies are created, they should have in these policies a template of some sort that smaller companies can use to collect really, very focused and simple data collection. And I think the EPA does a good job of this. So EPA comes out with like an emission standard, or they come out with a new environmental policy or permit requirement. They'll have on the website a spreadsheet that says, hey, to get you started, here's a spreadsheet, here's all the parameters. You can just fill it in and send it in. OSHA does the same with incident reporting. They have online little form. If you're a small company, it is perfectly acceptable to just say, hey, we calculated up our incidents on a piece of paper, a piece of notebook paper, and we're going to type it in and we're sending it in. A lot of policies need to have that. And I noticed that in Europe, that doesn't seem to be the norm as much. I mean, they kind of just pop out the policy and good luck. We hope eFrag has been the best that I've seen, but I don't know if you've been on the eFrag website. I encourage you to. It's extremely complex. If you go to that eFrag website, I dare you to find a template. I dare you. I dare you to find a CSRD report that's less than 100 pages. 100 pages. I dare you.
Yes, even a science student has difficulty of reading all the
Yes,
reports, I think.
they're huge. They're absolutely huge. So that's going to be a real challenge for these smaller companies. But I think that's also an opportunity risk, opportunities, and impacts. That's also an opportunity for software companies to address that smaller and emerging market. Because if we're truly going to move towards a sustainable environment in any capacity, we have to include these smaller organizations. They're the bread and butter, not just of the US, but around the world. We have to be able to capture those carbon insights and be able to support them.
Thank you. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome.
Great questions, everybody.
I don't know if anybody else had any others. As you can see, I love talking about this. So I could probably talk all night, which would not make Dorothy happy.
Are there any other last minute questions? I know we just had one person enter. We're ending the webinar, but good news, it's recorded, so it may be shared on our YouTube or also just via email as well. And I know Catryna, you did mention that you're going to share the slide deck.
Happy to. Happy
Okay.
to share my slide deck. Happy to share it.
All right. Shelton, do you have any other questions for Catryna before we say goodbye?
No, I don't have anything. I am very, very. I wondered if you were going to merge and dive into the blockchain with this. And my brain was going blockchain the whole time. It's where we're talking about like, okay, well, why are we not using blockchain here? Because that's just a great opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for things to be just immutable and you know
Mm-hmm.
so glad that you moved for that. But no, this is absolutely fantastic. I know. This is a topic that I was personally very, very interested in, and especially as you know, students of us who are looking at another opportunities or maybe you know, shifting careers, we see these acronyms readily potpourri through job applications and job descriptions, and so it's really
Mm-hmm.
nice to be able to understand what this means. And then now we appreciate also you giving us some insight as to where we can go to dive a little bit further into this so that we can be able to speak very eloquently regarding these reporting frameworks whenever we have our amazing interviews as a result of being SCI students.
Yes, and you will have them. You will have them. And please, for anyone on here, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to chat further, please don't hesitate to reach out,
I can
especially
attest
about
to that.
interviews.
I can attest to that. If you ever want to reach out to Catryna, maybe she might get back to you 3 days later. It's all right, but she'll still get back to you
But
because
I will get back to you.
get back to you. She
I will
is
get back to
awesome.
you.
But yeah, thank you all so much again. And I am not a student, and this is a new field to me. So a lot of these was like, this was new, very, very new. I did learn one new thing today, greenwashing, but you best believe I will be using it a lot. I'm like, okay, what you doing over there?
Mm-hmm.
But thank you again for those that were able to join us today. And thanks, Shelton, for moderating our Q&A today. And I hope to see you all at some of our events. There is going to be a survey that is going to go out asking just about your thoughts about today's event. And it's going to be anonymous. So please feel free to just share your opinions and your thoughts. We really love to hear back from you all. And thank you again, Catryna. I appreciate you. I just thank you again for this wonderful workshop.
You're welcome. Thank you. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.